Welcome to an episode of the Overnight Success Podcast. I'm really excited today to have Leon Hitchens here today. He's a digital marketer and entrepreneur based out of Texas. He's built a portfolio of lean, profitable online businesses, including a podcast platform called the Boost Network, a WordPress development called WP Creative House, and a marketing agency called Ruskin Consulting. He's also the co-owner of a USA tax solutions company. And I'm really excited because over the last couple of years, I've seen Leon scale these organizations and show up and serve others along with building his own family. And it's really neat to see that there's a possibility to scale and build all of these things, and I question how you're able to do it. So I'm excited to hop in and hear your story today of your quote unquote overnight success, Leon. So thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Chrissy. I'm excited to talk about the businesses myself. Like, can't stop talking about myself generally. So it's a good spot.
Awesome. Well, I have several questions, and it's an honor to be able to take you into the journey here on the podcast because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the tax solution lane of this is one of the newer ventures. The Boost Network has been around for a long time, and you've been scaling the marketing agency. So I'd love to hear is how you started and what that really journey looked like, because you couldn't do them all at one time, right? So I want to learn all the things.
Yeah, I cannot do everything all at once. I've learned to kind of simmer ideas and put them in a parking lot and come back to them. But this journey started about about 12 years ago. So definitely no overnight success. And that started when I was tech blogging. I just started to get tech blogs go and wrote for Android Authority, a little bit of Engadget and some of those really big tech publication, and realized that the same skills that are used in journalism, that are used in that kind of entrepreneurial, like freelancing of publishing everywhere, was the same thing that was going to work in marketing. And that got me to a marketing agency about 10 years ago. And that was where I was able to kind of learn the in and outs, what a marketing agency looks like. And what I discovered was, essentially if I could get one cash flowing asset going and marketing, selling my time and selling, inevitably other people's times and layering it on top, gave me a real good basis to say, hey, I could scale this further. And, the lean profitable, that was always my goal, is as much profit, as much automation, as much, now AI that's able to get me to a place where I had enough profit to turn that into a savings piggy bank and then go and do another business that essentially could, scale to some point. And these are not, they're large businesses, but they're not, multi-million dollar businesses. Some of them do $100,000 a month. And, that's very, very, lucrative. But, what is success to, everything is just getting that to then turn it into the next step. So, was able to do the main marketing agency, which is Ruskin Consulting, turn that into WP Creative House to sell some themes that essentially we had folks that wouldn't pay us or wouldn't be able to pay the full amount of a website. So we're building themes to be able to sell it to them, and realize we could just sell them out there for, anywhere from $50 to $100, and people would buy them with little to no input, kind of a SaaSitized business. And then we always knew we had a problem with marketing folks, that they weren't able to essentially tell us what their budget was, which came into the tax business. But it all started off of me more or less out of that agency, turning into freelancing, turning into an agency, and then making steps along the way to solidify the business together. And then the podcast stuff came as just an off chance. I had a partner at the time that wanted to do some podcasting and said it would be really good public presence. And I agreed with it. And, it was a little bit of a money pit for a while, but finally getting the leads and the recommendations, and then also just getting to talk to people, similar to yourself. And that then leads into a funnel of feeding all of those businesses. So while the the podcasting might still lose money, it does feed all of the money. And I consider that a sales expense in the end. So everything was always with what is the next step? Where can we grow? Where can we do it? And what does success look for like in that business?
Love that. And I love that it's all interconnected. So they're supporting each other, they're helping them scale. And you kind of showed up and didn't know which one maybe was first, or which one was first, actually, before I finish this thought.
Yeah, the
Or did they
first
all
one
kind of come
really
at the
was
same?
the Ruskin Consulting, the marketing white label business, because that was me selling my time and then inevitably realizing that we can install, team members all over the world and including in America to just kind of service that without, selling all of my time.
Absolutely. Okay, so that does make sense. So you showed up, you figured out, hey, I want to scale this. And then how do I scale it? I hire the right people to help scale, but also build the business model that helps you get to that next level and supports kind of, because you can't be all things, right? But what I'm hearing is as you showed up, you were like, okay, we can create this pathway and then this pathway, and you're pushing them all forward, which is really neat to hear. And how have you been able to kind of pull those levers and leverage your marketing background? I'm like blown away that you're able to do taxes and marketing and, podcasting and all these different pieces. So how do you leverage your skill set to really show up and build those? Are you the CEO of all those companies? Are you a marketing expert? Are you an admin? Are you the finance guy? Like, how are you building all of that out?
Yeah, I play my role. I am not the CEO. I'm often not the main full face of any of these businesses. I'm often what I would, I guess, consider the chief operating officer of all of them. I'm trying to execute on the back end, make sure the right people are hired, follow up on their tasks, make sure they're kind of doing the work that they're supposed to, and across all the businesses. The marketing agency has a main full person running it. It's my business partner, my main business partner, and he's the one that's doing sales and kind of pushing it along. I might, be the face occasionally to clients there, but for the most part, there's a pretty good system in place there. On the tax side, we bring in partners just like there. We bought somebody out and said, hey, you are now kind of the main operating partner. You're the one that's doing the taxes. He's the one that's the CPA and the enrolled agent. And then we do the back end. We, plug in the marketing. We come and bring in the systems. And I just follow up saying, hey, are we hitting our goals, or are we moving along? Oh, we need this tools, this software. We need to solve these problems. And I try to do it in that manner. Same thing with the WP Creative House. There's a full-time dev that's more or less building the custom themes, and he's the one who's, making sure that they're getting sold, dealing with the support. And then we come in and, say, hey, what system can go into place? How can we optimize this? And then also give them some goals and KPIs and then hit it, so that I'm not always the full responsible one that's there and trying to, work at 10 p.m. at night to make sure everybody gets the outcomes that they need to get.
Mm. So you're building balance and you're leveraging the right people, which is amazing. And understanding kind of who's responsible for what is really, really important, right? And so I love that you're showing up with that intentionality. It sounds like you've got multiple, for lack of a better phrase, pokers in the fire, right? And you're scaling. And so I don't know that I've ever asked this question on the podcast, but I'd be curious if we reversed 10 years. So it's February 2016. Did you imagine you would have these multiple entities running and working in alongside each other to kind of build this lifestyle that's working for you with these systems in place and kind of living the lifestyle that you have today? Or is this, how did you get here?
Yeah, super long, hard journey. I don't think I'd ever have imagined it in the way that I imagined it. I always wanted to work online. I always wanted to work in business. I always wanted to work in tech in some capacity. Um, I would say that I've achieved a lot of that, and I do have a pretty lax lifestyle, but it is also very high pressure many times. Like sometimes I'm, on a computer. When I'm traveling, there is balance to some extent, but I don't think it is a perfect balance. So as I built everything, I think the big part was I knew like my sport, like I don't really love any one sport, but my one sport is business. And when I talk about it, I'm enjoying it. I like to understand all of it. I like the mechanics of it. So I really obsess over business. And as I was building it 10 years ago, what I knew I wanted was some sort of ability to control my own time. Like it was always freedom. So more than anything, I didn't want somebody dictating my time. And that's what I have right now. Like to some extent, obviously the businesses dictate my time, and all those businesses have dozens of little bosses that dictate my time. But I am able to kind of move that around and, push the chess pieces to say, hey, I don't really want to work hard on Fridays. I do more calls and, podcasts and stuff. So, I imagined it in some capacity, but I didn't think, I never thought I would actually achieve it in some capacity.
I mean, it's such a journey. And that's why thank you for sharing that, because I think it's a fun journey to see. And I am excited to hear. I'll pull a couple other threads before I ask the question of like, what is success or 10 years from now? Because I think there's still some things to dive into, such as you talk a lot about business. I love this analogy of sport. I don't know that I've ever heard it that way. And this is why I enjoy talking to you, because I feel like you're always bringing new perspectives and lenses into my world, so to speak. And so it's been neat to hear that. And one of the things that you speak a lot about in business is marketing. So when we look at marketing, could you kind of tell us how you feel that some of those things are either untested or outdated as we look at, especially we go into this generation of AI, right? And so I'd be curious your thoughts on kind of broadly marketing advice and how that's being entered into the marketplace.
Yeah, I think marketing is a core skill that everybody should have. It's no different than if you go on a date, you're marketing yourself by dressing properly and conveying your values by how you present yourself. And I think the same thing that everyone always says, that you have to have sales skills, you have to have some marketing skills. And it really is putting yourself in other people's shoes and trying to understand what the consumers trying to get to. So if you put yourself in that buying habit, like a lot of what I like to do is just try to understand what these businesses are pushing. Like, how are they trying to solve a problem? How are they trying to convey that to other people? And then how would somebody come and say, hey, do I trust this business? Is there, information on what's going on? And then also like, how is it answering my question? So more than anything, it's always put yourself in the shoes of whoever you're marketing to, whoever you're selling to, because marketing is sales. And while those organizations and people often hate each other, they are ultimately getting to the same goal, which is revenue and profit for the businesses or whatever they're trying to sell. So for anybody out there, it's always put yourself in the shoes, whether you're marketing yourself for a new job or trying to market yourself to get more business. It's who's the end customer? How do they search? How do they do it? I would go shop those businesses. I would go, talk to people and try to flip the script and just understand the ways that they're thinking versus always thinking of how can I impress them? It's how can I get inside their head and then also push to that. And I think in the world of AI, the key part is talk to people. Like that's the only way to bypass this AI slop. You can post a million times some cringy thought leadership that I myself do on LinkedIn, but if you're not engaging with that audience, talking to them, getting coffee, jumping on a call, you're really not going to make a lot of progress in what's the actual mindset of the buyer that you're trying to hit.
That's powerful. Yeah, I definitely, a lot of things that I've been talking about is like, there's still humans involved in this next step with AI. And so I love that you said, go talk to people. I think COVID really threw things for a loop as well, right? So we had all this digital interface, and then now we're trying to figure out and navigate what is this human interaction as we're building more technology and it's rapidly exploding. So it's this weird dynamic to play. But what I'm hearing is, A, you're showing up with intentionality, and B, there's this kind of organization of umbrella companies that you created to serve a human level of this and really understand what it is that your customers need. So, how did you decide on who your customers are, and how has that led to your success in these different entities that you're scaling?
I don't think you ever get to decide who your customer is per se. A lot of times you fall into it, and that's what happened. We fell into it with the marketing agency. We realized, working at a marketing agency, we could plug ourselves very quickly into other marketing agencies. That became our target. And then over time, those marketing agencies would get excess leads. They didn't want to service, if they were only doing B2B, they didn't want to service a consumer brick and mortar. We started picking up those leads, and you just, especially early on, you're hungry and you take whatever you can get to pay the bills and do everything. And I think when you're doing that, you start to see, hey, I am really good at one thing, or I am really good with these types of businesses because I understand it. I think the unfair advantage that I have is I really like really mundane facts and learning about, you know, uh, what the businesses does. Like, we've got a mechanic that swaps out engines. I've learned just about every car engine name that you can think of because we have to know what he services. I know what is a boat engine now. I know what is a small engine, what's, a bike, a motorcycle bike engine. And I think that's somewhat to the degree my unfair advantage. I'm able to do that, convey it to the team, and then turn around and, do that. The really important part now is anybody could possibly do that with AI. Like, you're able to go and learn about a business very, very quickly, share it with a larger set of team, and then execute on that. So it really is, again, I'm always putting myself in the customer's shoes, trying to learn as much about their business as they know about their business. And then I want to show that I care more about their business than that they even care. And that often keeps me around for a long time. That often keeps the team around for a long time. So it's just that compassion and caring, even if you are more worried about collecting a check. In the end, you just have to show that that check is value to you probably more than it's actually worth.
Mm, powerful. Yeah, I think that you hit it on the head. There's a few things there. So I love that you're consistently and constantly learning new things. I think that makes you such a valuable asset in the marketplace across many areas, right? And then you said compassion and caring, and building a business can be very challenging and lonely. And when you show up and you're there as a consultant, as a partner, as someone who walks alongside your clients and brings that knowledge, I love the phrase, don't ask for advice, ask for relevant experience. And so when you're building, you start to gain that relevant experience, right? And so I think that's really, really, really neat, Leon. Thank you for sharing that. Um, so you do mentoring, you support tons of different kinds of small businesses, you run multiple podcasts, you build these ventures. How did you learn how to do it all? Like, I mean, did you learn how to say no, or do you just find the right people? Like, I know we kind of touched on this a little bit. I just want to go a little bit deeper if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think it is a big people thing. You surround yourself with successful people that are driven and a little insane. Then you inevitably want to achieve the same as them. So much like somebody that's watching Gary Vee and impressed how he shows up and posts, 10 pieces of content a day and runs all those businesses. I surround myself with people that are again, obsessed with business, obsessed with what they're doing. And, in some capacity, just like a LeBron is obsessed with basketball, I'm obsessed with the businesses. So when I'm laying in bed, everything is not in the mindset of this is like turn off content or something. I'm like, man, that's a really good piece of content. Like, I did it the other day. Somebody was talking about a new update on Google. And I was like, I'm going to turn that into a LinkedIn post, and went to AI, crafted the post, edited, and then posted it. So everything is kind of in the mindset of what can this do for my business? What could this do for something that's out there? It's kind of like a video game designer. When they're playing a video game, they're not looking at the video game and enjoying it the same way somebody else would. They're looking at the mechanics. They're like, that was a really cool meta for how they handled this, storyline. The same thing on the business. I'm thinking like, oh hey, that's really good content. How can I mimic that in the business? And I've seen it a few times. People do really weird deals on buying businesses or acquiring something, and I'm like, oh, how could I copy that? How can I go do owner financing and not have to put money out front or have to go get a loan? Like the first business that I was involved in, I was small equity partner, turned that into buying a part of a marketing agency and then buying the next thing and the next thing. So there are small weird odd things that you can always do that kind of gets it to you, and that's how I'm always thinking about anything that happens in life, even conversations that I overhear, like, oh, that's really interesting that people are talking about ChatGPT. And I'm like, that's a big sign to me that the market has shifted and changed.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. And so you talk about too is like kind of this creating systems, becoming obsessed. Um, in our free form, there's a question in there that says like, what's something that people wouldn't know about you? So you have a black belt in American karate. How has that showed up in your ventures of building? Because I believe the gym is, or sport in general, is directly correlated to how you show up. And so to achieve a black belt is a huge accomplishment. Congratulations. And how has karate, American karate, showed up in your life and building businesses?
Yeah, I think any martial arts, and I've done a few others like Kempo and stuff, and gone further in them. And the big part is the discipline, like the amount of when we talk about balance, it's not always a perfect balance. Like you might have to commit more time in one area and take away from another. You just have to understand that you can also flip that script. If you're working every single day and you have Saturdays and all that, you can flip it and say, hey, this is my off day. Same thing with martial arts. You can, be working every day, learning a kata or doing something, and then turn the script and say, hey, I do really need to take some time from this and, go enjoy, a walk or do something else. But really it comes down to the discipline, like the amount of time somebody is practicing. Like my father always told me, I didn't have the basketball Jones gene. I didn't want to go out there and practice all the time. I didn't want to, in a basketball analogy, I didn't want to dribble at 10 o'clock at night. I didn't want to dribble in the morning. I learned over time, you have to get those 10,000 hours, those 10,000 reps in as quickly as possible so that you can hit the 20,000, 30,000. And that applies to anything. If you're learning marketing or you're doing consultant, the experiences is the most important part. Like you can start to spot patterns. So how do you get to executing on that? Very often you take the most work that's possible. You try to take, startup work. I would say, the corporate experience is, from getting out of college to the time you're 35, that's a lot of experience. But somebody who went and worked at a startup, for 5 years, and I worked at an agency that was a startup that essentially grew exponentially in 4 years. And that was like 10 years worth of experience that catapulted me 10, 15 years ahead of all my peers. So it is trying to find ways to get as many reps in as possible and then keep practicing so that you can lean on that experience and that expertise.
100%. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so valid and actionable and also relevant to our listeners. So stay disciplined and take action, right? And so I love that. Um, okay, cool. So as we're looking at this background and all the words of wisdom and nuggets you've shared today and where we're going next is like, I'd be curious, Leon, what is success to you? Like, we've touched on successful aspects, but if you were to narrow this down into, a 1 to 3 soundbite, like, what is the definition of success for Leon?
I think a lot of people look at success in the lens of fame and money and all of this. I think the most important part of success is having the freedom and capacity to do what you want. Um, everyone always talks about like FU money, like essentially you can walk away from things that you don't enjoy, that stress you out too much. And I've built that so everything is lean, it's profitable, if we don't want to take a project, if we don't want to handle a client, we can walk away from those scenarios. And it's not always about, having all of the Instagram followers, all those things. Many people that meet me don't realize, I own these businesses, I do all of that. They just, they see me as me, and I get to talk to them and chit chat. And then as time, they learn a lot more and then go, oh, okay. So you do have, pretty large businesses. They don't realize it, but I don't need that outside external success metric. I know that I'm profitable. I gotta, choose the times that I choose, and then really execute on the things that I enjoy. And like you mentioned, mentoring, talking to other business owners and really helping them so that they can, grow and pay more people and essentially support the economy that is the United States and the world.
That's powerful. I love it. I love that. Okay. And this kind of maybe more of a selfish question here, but as you're managing all of these ventures, do you show up with like, okay, on this day it's specifically to this company, and this day it's, or this time, and how do you kind of manage all of that, and does it shift? And because it sounds like you've had like consistently compounded action has built you to this level of success, and as you look for more and you're still continuing to build, is with this heartfelt mission success, by the way, like I hear it's not driven behind the money. I love that it's driven behind like the compassion piece. So how do you manage your days? Like it sounds like you're doing so much.
Yeah, my days manage me for the most part. I go to where the problems are. Try to, if I see an email, my brain, it's a very odd place, but I don't see like images, the apple, to the outline of an apple to seeing an apple. Like if you picture an apple right at the second, I don't picture an apple. I see an outline of an apple. My brain like gets triggered on different things. So, I got a 1099 this morning, and I was like, hey, let me go check in on the tax business. Like, are we hitting the things? Are we getting content out? Have we contracted with people? And then after that, I was like, I know I have a client that I'm like responsible for that I'm going to go deal with. And then, things pop up. We've got hiring issues right now. We have, people that are wanting time off all at the same time, and we got to deal with that. We've got clients that are, struggling for one reason or another. So a lot of my day is dictated by that. Um, the big part though is I try to make sure whatever I'm doing is not just like getting distracted. So, uh, if it's, an email and I was supposed to send the email and I got an idea, I need to finish that email and then block out 30 minutes to deal with whatever is there versus 5 minute, 5 minute, 5 minute increments. I try to break it into 30 minutes to an hour that I'm tackling something and actually addressing it and having impact that is actually being, measured and put out there. So if I'm working on the tax business, I knew, hey, are we contracted? And I saw that we were missing contract signatures. I emailed people for the team and just kind of reached out. So I knew that there was an actual output, not just I checked in and touched a few things and didn't really deliver on anything.
Yeah, that's so important because it's like shipping the thing off, even if it takes a little bit longer than you think, really moves the needle much more than thinking about moving and doing the thing, right? So that's perfect. I love that. Okay, so I feel like we've touched on a lot of things so far. I'd be curious, um, is there anything that you felt like we should have dove into that I didn't dive us in deep enough? Because I love hearing your story. I love what you're building. I love how you're showing up for people. And I have just a couple more questions, but before I kind of move us toward that, is there anything that we didn't touch on that we should have, talked about today?
Not too much. I think the part that I want to, reiterate is you gotta, everyone tells you gotta be passionate about what you're doing. You gotta love what you're doing. I think more than anything, you gotta obsess over what you're doing. And that's the most important part. Like it is a sports. Like I use the sports analogy a lot because I don't like when companies say they're a family. Like you don't fire your family. You do fire sport team members. If they're performing, they're performing and their contract is extended. And if they're the all-star, they will stay there. And I think that encourages people to be competitive and do all of that. But I'm obsessed over everything that I'm doing, and I'm obsessed about business. Like I enjoy the mechanics of, what is the profit and loss? Why is it happening? What are the legal, parts to it? So I am really, really obsessed to it. And I think anybody that's doing something, if you're obsessed about something and you can tie it into the business, that's going to be the part that really gives you that unfair advantage. If you love medicine, but you're not a doctor, and you go and, work with doctor offices, you're obsessed about the medicine and the business model that's there. You're going to, convey a different thing to those business owners than just going there and being like, I'm doing this just to check a box and make money.
Yeah. I love the thing is like from where I sit with the word obsession, I'm like, oh, that sounds like, oh gosh, I'm nervous about that, admittedly. But then I look at it and I think, oh, but if I'm obsessed, I feel good and I want to like actually execute. It makes it so much easier, right? It's like I'll show up and do the thing because it's even something that like I want to move forward. And I think you're right. Like that obsession is super key. And if you're not obsessed about it, it's hard to want to execute on it, right? And so
Yeah.
that's really
And
really powerful.
people are obsessed with so many things. They're obsessed with music, and they're obsessed with movies and TV shows and actors and sports. But none of those things really get conveyed into how does it make me money? If you're obsessed with sports, there's a possibility to go work with, kids and build a business around that, doing sports leagues, or even going and, opening a gym that, I've seen some really cool gyms that are focused on basketball, where they're training and teaching, kids to get better and better. And then there's other, capacities out there where people are just obsessed on one key part, and then they turn it into a whole business. Whether, I've seen people are obsessed with sourdoughs and gardens and turn that into YouTube channels and businesses out there. So it really is an obsession. And I don't think it's a scary thing, because again, as humans, we obsess over everything. Like that we fixate on something and, get into that, whether, again, people obsess over their lawns, their houses. There's so many things. You just have to turn it into something, hey, how can I make this a business? And I think that's when people turn and shift and go, oh, this is actually fun, because I actually enjoy it, and it's a passion, but it's became an obsession.
Yeah, that's so good. Because it's building a business is going to take a lot of time, right? It's not like you mentioned it's like you saw that article at 10 p.m. and then you were able to turn it into a piece of content that helped build your businesses, right? It's like this obsession that allows you to want to show up and serve and really help move the needle. I heard something, I think it was this morning. It was like you're doing a disservice to the whole world if you don't show up and actually execute on the things that you are obsessed about, because then you're leaving it for the next generation to you not move forward that idea or that thing that you were here to build. And so it's really neat to hear that. And especially, I know we didn't dive too deep into it today, but like, I know you have a family and you have children and they're seeing you show up. And I think that's so powerful. And so, how are you leaving that next legacy and that generation for your family, as your kids grow? I don't honestly even know how old they are. I apologize.
Yeah, they're the oldest is 10, both daughters, and the youngest is 6. So they've definitely been through the journey of it. They see me work a lot. They know I have a podcast. They go and listen to it, and they kind of explore things. They kind of understand that's there. But also, if I don't go to even if I don't go to them with the store, like I go to the store with them, we essentially are everywhere as a family unit, more or less. And if I don't go somewhere, they're kind of like, "Oh, Dad, like, what are you doing? Where are you going?" And I'm like, "Oh, I got to go do something for work, or, I'm traveling." And they're like, "Oh, that's an odd thing." So I think I've always, again, valued my freedom, and maybe it's a little bit of an authority complex that I just don't like authority or anybody telling me what to do, to a flaw. And that is also a benefit, because I can tell somebody, hey, no, I'm just not going to do that. I've got to go to the family. And I think a lot of people are scared to say that. They're they're scared to say, like, oh no, I'm going to pick my family over picking, an extra $5,000. And if you need it, I can understand it. And, you got to build your way to that. But at some point, you do have to go, when is enough enough? And, I just because you want an extra 10 grand to go buy something really cool, you don't need it. Like, I think that's the part that I try to tell founders is, if you build $1 million a year business that is very successful, profit 300K, that's more than a majority of Americans make. And that can set you up for life. You don't need that much money to be set up for life. You just need just enough to buy a modest house, have, some cars that are maybe 5 to 10 years old, and then, live responsibly. You don't have to travel 3 times a year. You don't have to do all that. You can build very happy things and systems in there. And that's the part. Like, I often see people, chew off a $500,000 home and they thought that's great, but now they don't realize the maintenance on that is excessive, and you let that lifestyle creep. And, certain people want that and need that, but I try to tell founders and any business owner to live within the means and just do it. It's like Warren Buffett. He was in the same house. He ate the same McDonald's that probably slowly ate away at him. But they stuck to these modest things, and I really, really value that more than anything. I try to ground myself in, hey, even where I live, there's a firefighter across the street, a UPS driver, a tech person next to me. Those things give you the bearing on what's happening really in America, because if you're in a gated community and lawyers and doctors all around you, they don't understand it. So I think that freedom with some grounding is super important in the end. And obviously money plays a important part that gives me that freedom and lets me, do what I want. But it is that grounding and understanding, like, what does the true person go through? And you can understand, like, hey, if you're paying somebody $12 an hour and they're living in a high cost of living city, that they're not going to be able to make it. So how do you get them, the right pay, and understand that, hey, even if they're making 100,000, they could still be struggling day to day because of college and student debt and all these other things.
Mm. Leon, this is so good. I'm like, I'm going to have to listen to this again because I'm here, I'm consuming it, but I think I need to hear it again. Like, it's just one of those, this is an episode that I think is just really like timely, at least for me. So thank you for diving deep in this as well. I know our audience will really appreciate it. And so you're a wealth of knowledge. You have so much wisdom. I love even your example of, you have the firefighter and the people living next to you, or your community, and you're showing up and you're here with compassion. And that shows in so many areas of how you serve, not only in the mentorship, but in your community of people that I've seen you interact with. And I just think that's awesome. And so I'd love to hear, is there a book recommendation or a podcast or a YouTube channel other than your own? We'll plug you in a minute, but like, do you have some maybe resources that really helped you get to this point of scaling your companies and getting the right mindset to show up as well? I think a lot of businesses playing that sport in the right mindset.
Yes, 100%. The one book that I would recommend, or two books, one of them is called Atomic Habits. I think that's a really, really good one. It is about showing up every single day, improving 1%, and that compounds exponentially. And then the other one is the 5 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. I think it's a little outdated, but I think the principles in it really kind of shine through and help business owners. The podcast that I would recommend to people, it's called MoneyWise. It talks a lot about when people get to wealth, how do they deal with it? They think, there's a outsized, like, wealth solves all problems. It really kind of breaks down those things, and they also talk about how do they get to the success metric. And I think all of that kind of, you know, kind of embodies what I've even been saying here, is those three, consumable items.
Thank you for that. So as we wrap up here, where can people find you and what's next on the horizon? And feel free, plug yourself away here. We want to know where to go find you.
100%. I think the best place is, LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm Leon Hitchens on those. I like to say, some more risque stuff on Twitter. LinkedIn's a little more buttoned up and polished. I've got a podcast, The Marketing Boost, where I talk to founders about marketing. And then, obviously the tax business, if anybody needs taxes or help on any of that, USA Tax Solutions, and then the marketing company, which is Ruskin Consulting. So any one of those places. But I do really like people to comment on my stuff on LinkedIn. So that's one great place.
Yeah. And I think to your point, we'll drop all those show notes or all the links in the show notes for our listeners. Feel free to find Leon. But also, yeah, I think that, we live in such a digital age that the commenting and the connection is real. Don't go in and get like some AI generated content comment. I saw that the other day. There's a whole post about that. But like, read it, be sincere, build community. And I think that's a big piece of scaling companies too. So Leon, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up here?
No, I don't think so. This was a really fun conversation, and I'm glad that I could share some stuff and hopefully help some business owners kind of understand and reset what success and even just what their life looks like.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story on the Overnight Success podcast. And it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for tuning in. And Leon, until next time, thank you so much.